If you're losing deals in your real estate wholesaling business after you get them under contract, you are throwing money down the drain. And so today, what we're going to go over is why that's happening and what you can do to prevent that in the future. So that way you can actually run an efficient wholesaling business. So let's jump right in. I've done over $1 million a year in wholesale assignments for the last 2 years straight. And what I've realized is you could be a great closer and have a bad back end process, and you're just going to be spinning your wheels. And so these are a couple of things that we did in our wholesaling business and have helped our students do the same to drastically increase our contract to close ratio. So the number one reason why your deals are falling out of contract is you have a lack of commitment inside of your closing process. So if sellers don't really feel a commitment to change, then they are always going to second guess it the second you get under contract. So you're going to get the contract signed. You're going to slap yourself on the back and say, yeah, I did such a good job. And they're going to start getting remorse because you didn't get a commitment from them. So the number one thing that you can do is learn how to ask commitment questions in your sales process. So that way, when they get off the phone with you and they sign that contract, they are excited about starting the next chapter of their life. They're not hesitant. Did I make the right decision? I'll tell you, when I was just starting out and I was just learning how to close, this would happen to me all the time where I learned how to close sellers. And so I would get them, all excited to move. And then they would sign the contract. And then 5 minutes later, they would call me and they'd be like, I cannot believe what I just did. They were already thinking about backing out right after they signed the contract. And it was because I didn't know how to ask commitment questions. And so what that sounds like when you're talking to a seller is asking questions like, are you 100% committed to actually changing your situation so that way you don't have to deal with X, Y, and Z anymore? Or asking them future pricing questions about what are they looking forward to about the next chapter of their life. And then when they tell you, okay, so it sounds like it's time to make a change, and asking little subtle commitment questions. We literally have tons of commitment questions that we could ask. I couldn't go over all of them today to just get the seller to committing to change. So that way, once they sign that contract, they're excited and they're not just scared about taking the next steps or that they just made the wrong decision. The next thing that I consistently see wholesalers do, and I made this mistake myself, is only selling once. What do I mean by that? So when you sell and you close a contract, that is the beginning of a service. We are a service-based business. What we do is we help sellers get out of their current house, get into their next one quickly or as easy as possible. And so a lot of times we just sign the contract and we say, okay, cool, see you at the closing table. And what happens is sometimes hiccups come through our business, right? We have to extend, we have to lower the price. There's a million different things that can happen. And if I'm only selling them one time, when I call them the day before closing and I say, hey, we need to extend, or hey, we need to lower the price, they're going to say, heck no. I just signed the agreement. You guys are going back against your word. But when I am calling them every single week, giving them updates, constantly reselling them on the idea of moving to their next property, if I need a 5-day extension or I need a small price reduction, they're going to work with me because I'm constantly selling them throughout the entire process. And so this is one of the biggest things that I see is we sell once and then we just send it and forget it. You have to have whoever runs your back end, whether it's you or whether it's someone else, needs to also be a good salesperson. They need to be able to help the seller with their problems. And that brings me to my third point, which is you need to provide an actual service. Okay. Now, if you've ever had a deal that you've had under contract and someone stole it from you, I guarantee you it was because you were not providing a service to the seller and the other person was. When I say providing a service, I mean, we help sellers move out of their property. We help them get movers. We help them, find the next place to rent. We are literally helping a seller right now. We're getting them into a short-term furnish finder property while we are applying for them to get into their next house. Those are some of the services that we provide. We will get a mover to come over. We'll plan an estate sale. There's a million different things that we do to actually provide a service to our sellers instead of just, hey, we're going to offer you this price and send it and forget it. We're never going to call you again. Talk to you at the closing table. All right. You need to be providing a service to your sellers. And if you are constantly providing a service, if you need a small extension, if you need a small price reduction, they're going to be willing to work with you because they understand the value that you're providing. You're not just giving them a price for the home. You are helping them with everything they need to start the next chapter of their life. Okay, so you need to make sure you're getting that commitment. You need to be selling throughout the entire process, and you need to provide a service to your sellers. Now, the last thing is the simplest, but if you just do this, you probably won't have any problems with your contract to close. And that is being able to buy properties at steep discounts. Okay. So if you are locking up properties and none of the investors want them, you're just locking them up too high. It's as simple as that. We have done everything to fix our dispo process. We've tried to send out every single deal to tens of thousands of people. And it all really comes down to this. If your property is priced appropriately, if you get it for a price that makes sense for an investor, they're going to make money on it. You'll be able to sell it. And you're not going to have to do extensions. You're going to have people fighting over it, and you're not going to have to do any sort of price reductions. So where I see a lot of people make mistakes is they always smoke a little bit of hopium. So what I mean by that is they know their max allowable offer, they know what the comparables are saying. Seller wants a little bit more money, and instead of focusing on their sales skills to help the seller realize that by us offering more money, we are increasing the risk of them not being able to get their end result on time and as promised. So what they end up doing instead is to say, yeah, well, let me see, I think we could do that. Let me just lock up the contract and then I'll just hope for the best. And then what they have is a super bloated pipeline full of deals that aren't closing, and they're wondering why, and they're starting to blame their dispo team, they're starting to blame A, B, and C. And the reality is you're just locking them up too high. That's the bottom line. And so in one of my other videos, I'll put it in the description here, I talk about the mindset of top closers. And so if you haven't watched that, go watch that so you can learn what you need to do to actually get sellers to focus on the result. And then you can make your price work because they're focused on the result instead of just the price. If you're buying properties too high, what you're going to have is you're going to have a super bloated, inefficient team and inefficient process. Your pipeline's going to be full of deals, but none of them are actually closing. You're going to feel like you're working. You're going to feel super busy, but your bank account says otherwise. Okay. So you need to make sure that you're buying properties at steep discounts. So those four things, as simple as they are a couple of levers you can pull. So that way you're actually running an efficient business and you're not bloated with a bunch of overpriced contracts and sellers that are not picking up the phone. They're going to work with another company, or they just won't negotiate with you at all if you need an extension or you need a price reduction. So make sure you're getting a commitment inside of your sales process. Make sure you are selling throughout your entire process. So when we do a handoff with our dispositions team, they're selling us again. Every single week they're calling, they're selling our service again. We're actually providing a real service to the sellers. So we are helping them with whatever they need. We're doing rental applications for them. We're helping move their stuff. If they're inherited the property, we're doing estate sales. Anything that they need, you're providing that service to them. That's how we actually run our business, and why people work with us is because we're providing a service. And then lastly, you need to make sure that you're buying properties at a steep enough discount so they work for investors. So hopefully this helps you guys. Make sure you guys go implement this in your process today. If you watch this video and you don't implement any of this, you've learned nothing. See you guys on the next video.